I would like to call the Finance, Ways, and Means Committee to order for March 25th, 2025. Madam Clerk, please open the board for roll call. Madam Clerk, please take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 21 members present. You have a quorum.
All right, thank you very much. Members, do we have any personal orders or announcements? And I know we have a couple folks on the list, but let me just say, I look back there in the back of the room and I see a living legend back there. So we do want to welcome former chairman of Budget Sub and leader, Gerald McCormick. If some of y'all wonder, sometimes you come to my office and I say no before I think about it. There's a mug sitting on my desk that Chairman McCormick gave me, and it says, "How about no?" And so when he came up to Rogersville and visited me, and he handed that to me, and I said, "I appreciate that. Now you've got to sign it so I can let people know where that came from." So great to see you here. Great to see you here. All right, let's go to Chairman Hawk. You're recognized.
Chairman Hicks, you stole our thunder. I was going to make the same recognition, and I've not told any McCormick stories, and I will not in front of this crowd. But it's great to see one of my best friends in the world. Welcome, Joe. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman Faison, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of all my 5 kids, I've got the youngest one with me spending spring break, my little man Tuck right here. And I want y'all to know that last Saturday, he scored 30 points at an AAU game. So y'all give him some love.
Tucker, you keep following your footsteps of your mother and you'll do fine. Keep that up. Chairman Boyd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, today I have a shadow with me from Watertown High School. I have Mr. Max Schroeder. Max, if you'll stand up, and members, if you'll make him feel welcome.
All right, any other personal orders? Hearing none and seeing none, we do have 8 bills that we will take up today, and that will be followed by the administration amendment overview. And again, we're going to take up the bills first. So let's begin with item number 1 on our calendar. It's going to be House Bill 760 by Chairman Darby. You have a motion and a second, and you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill simply allows for schools to keep an emergency stock of inhalers for quick relief, life-saving medication for children who are experiencing an asthma attack.
All right, thank you. Members, any discussion on the bill? Question's been called. Any objections? Calling the question. Hearing none and seeing none, are we ready to vote? Madam Clerk, please open the board. Those in favor of House Bill 760 moving on to calendar and rules, please vote aye. All those opposed, no. Have all members voted? Would anyone like to change their vote? Madam Clerk, please take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 22 ayes, 0 noes.
The ayes have it. House Bill 760 moves on to calendar and rules.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Chairman. Committee.
That brings us to item number 2 on our calendar. It's going to be House Bill 530 by Chairman Eldridge. You have a motion and a second. And Chairman, looks like we've got an amendment here that was filed by Chairman Williams, and I have drafting code 6052. Chairman Williams, is that correct? All right. Would you have a motion and a second on the amendment? We have a motion and a second on the amendment. And Chairman Williams, would you like to describe the amendment, please?
Thank you. I'd like to thank Chairman Eldridge for his work on this. He and I had a discussion about this. This just simply caps the fee at $15 in lieu of the $10 that's currently being charged. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Members, you've heard the description of the amendment. Any questions? Chairman Eldridge, would you like any comments from you regarding the
No,
amendment?
I just appreciate the fact that Chairman Williams worked with us on that, and I think that made it a better bill.
All right, we're now voting on the amendment, drafting code 6052 on the House Bill 530. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. We're back on the bill as amended. And Chairman Eldridge, you're recognized.
All right, this bill just allows the voter education online testing. Currently, this was the only test that they could not do. So there is monitoring on there so that they do know that you're the one taking the test as well. So that's what the bill does.
All right, thank you for this description. Members, any discussion? Hearing none and seeing none, are we ready to vote? Madam Clerk, please open the board. If you're in favor of House Bill 530, moving on to calendar and rules, please vote aye. All those opposed, no. Has everyone voted? Would anyone like to change their vote? Madam Clerk, please take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 23 ayes, 0 noes.
The ayes have it. House Bill 530 moves on to calendar and rules.
Thank you, Chairman and Committee.
Thank you. That brings us to item number 3. On our calendar is going to be House Bill 1060 by Chairman Howard. You have a motion and a second. And sir, you are recognized on House Bill 1060.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill comes from the County Clerks Association. Currently, a large number of our county clerks provide a voluntary service to their constituents who hunt and fish by selling the TWRA hunting and fishing license. Their fee of $1.50 no longer covers the cost of their time, their labor, computer, paper, and ink. In recent months, or maybe a couple of years ago, the TWRA quit selling them directly to the public and have partnered with a third-party vendor who charges $3.52. The clerks would like to raise that fee to $3 to cover their costs, and that's what the bill does, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Thank you, Chairman Howell. Members, you've heard the description of House Bill 1060. Any discussion? Question's been called. Objection called on the question. Hearing none and seeing none, Madam Clerk, please open the board. For those in favor of House Bill 1060, moving on to calendar and rules, please vote aye. All those opposed, no. Have all members voted? Would anyone like to change your vote? Madam Clerk, please take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 22 ayes, 0 noes.
The ayes do have it. House Bill 1060 moves on to calendar and rules.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee.
Thank you, Chairman. That brings us to item number 4. It's going to be House Bill 329 by Chairman Martin. You have a motion to second. Sir, you're recognized for a description.
Thank you, Chairman and Committee. This bill simply allows banks in Tennessee to enter into a multiple employer welfare agreement, or better known as a MEWA, with the North Carolina Banking Association. This risk pool will help lower healthcare costs for community banks across Tennessee.
All right, members,
With
you've
that, I
heard.
stand ready for questions.
Yes, sir. Members, you've heard the description of House Bill 329. Any discussion? Hearing none and seeing none, Madam Clerk, please open the board. All those in favor of House Bill 329 moving on to calendar and rules, please vote aye. All those opposed, no. Has everyone voted? Would anyone like to change their vote? Madam Clerk, please take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 23 ayes, 0 noes.
The ayes do have it. House Bill 329 moves on to calendar and rules.
Thank you, Chairman and Committee.
Thank you. That brings us to item number 5. Item number 5 on our calendars, House Bill 20 by Representative Reedy. You have a motion to second. You are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and committee as introduced specifies that the State Guard is a separate entity within the Military Department for budgetary purposes.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, you've heard the description of House Bill 20. Any discussion? Hearing none and seeing none, Madam Clerk, please open the board. If you're in favor of House Bill 20, moving on to calendar and rules, please vote aye. All those opposed, no. Has everyone voted? Would anyone like to change your vote? Madam Clerk, please take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 23 ayes, 0 noes.
The ayes have it. House Bill 20 moves on to calendar and rules.
Thank you, Chairman and committee.
Thank you, Chairman Reedy. That brings us to item number 6 on our calendar. It's going to be House Bill 683 by Leader Lamberth. We have a motion to second, and you are recognized. And it looks like we have an amendment drafting code 5468. Is that correct?
Yes,
We
sir,
have
Mr. Chairman.
a motion to second. Would you like to describe the amendment?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. It just allows the same exemptions for current law enforcement that was in the previous statute under the Armed Guard for the Enhanced Armed Guard.
All right, members, you've heard the description of the amendment. Any discussion? Hearing none and seeing none, we're now voting on Amendment 5468 on the House Bill 683. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes do have it. We're back on the bill as amended. That brings us back to the sponsor. Leader Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This just creates the enhanced armed guard licensure as an option in Tennessee.
All right, any discussion on the bill? Hearing none and seeing none, Madam Clerk, please open the board. If you're in favor of House Bill 683, moving on to calendar and rules, please signify by voting aye. If you're opposed, please vote no. Has all members voted? Would any member like to change your vote? Madam Clerk, please take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 23 ayes, 0 nos.
The ayes have it. House Bill 683 moves on to calendar and rules. All right, that brings us to item number 7 on our calendar, also by Leader Lambert, House Bill 117. We have a motion and a second. It looks like, Leader, we do have we have amendment drafting code 006341. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion and a second. Would you like to describe the amendment?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. It just amends by deleting the language may include, but is not limited to, and substituting instead the language must include.
All right, members, you've heard the description. Any discussion on the amendment? Hearing none and seeing none, we're now voting on the amendment drafting code 006341 on to House Bill 117. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. We're back on the bill as amended. Leader Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the Retail Accountability Program, or RAP, which first started in 2012. It works very well. We're just taking the sunset off of it.
All right. Thank you very much for the description. Members, any discussion? Again, we're on House Bill 117. Hearing none and seeing none. Are you ready to vote? Madam Clerk, please open the board. All those in favor of House Bill 117 moving on to calendar and rules, please signify by voting aye. All those opposed, no. Has everyone voted? Would anyone like to change your vote? Madam Clerk, please take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 24 ayes, 0 nos.
The ayes do have it. House Bill 117 moves on to calendar and rules. All right, item number 8 on our calendar is going to be House Bill 561 by Representative Capley. You have a motion to second. Sir, you're recognized for a description.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill was brought to me by the Comptroller's Office. As introduced, it authorizes certain utility systems to borrow money in anticipation of revenue collections and to issue negotiable notes to evidence such borrowing to provide emergency cash flows for such systems, obviously with the oversight of our great Comptroller of the Treasury. And it also establishes a deadline for the payment of those notes. And that's what the bill does.
All right, members, you've heard the description of House Bill 561. Any discussion? Hearing none and seeing none. Madam Clerk, please open the board. If you're in favor of House Bill 561 moving on to calendar and rules, please signify by saying aye.
I have to text the Comptroller here. Let him know what's going on.
All those opposed, no. Has everyone voted? Would anyone like to change their vote? Madam Clerk, please take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 24 ayes, 0 nos.
All right. The ayes do have it. House Bill 561 moves on to calendar and rules. Thank you, Representative Capley. All right. Members, we will now move on to the presentation by the Finance and Administration for the overview of the administration amendment. And I know Commissioner Bryson is sitting out there. So members, just a reminder, you can refer to the dashboard for all presentation documents. And Commissioner, if you'd like to come on forward, without objection, we're going to go out of session. We are out of session. Commissioner, just a reminder, we'll work the microphone up here. So once you see that red light come on, you are ready to go. And if you would just introduce us to your staff. It's all yours, sir.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. It's good to be with you today. Thank you for the opportunity to be here late in the afternoon. So it's good to be here. Jim Bryson, Commissioner of Finance Administration. I have with me Budget Director David Thurman, Assistant Budget Director Alex Schuman to help me with the presentation and with any questions that you may have. This is a fairly straightforward budget amendment. The Comptroller Emeritus, the beloved Justin Wilson, would say this is plain vanilla. And so that's what this is. And so we'll go over it pretty quickly and be ready to answer whatever questions that you might have. As we get started, I want to remind you of I want to go back and remind you a little bit of the special session because, as you know, that we passed some major major budget items in the special session, and anything that we pass in the special session obviously affects our ability to fund items in the FY 25 and 26 budget. And so I'll go back to special session expenditures on this slide. As you can see, we really tackled disaster relief, which was $472 million total in those categories on the slide there. And then $23 million in education. All of these were FY 25 expenditures that went into effect, that have gone into effect already. Remember that we had $23 million in education, because I'm going to refer to that on this next slide also. This is also, I just want to remind you of the money that has been put in K through 12 education already in this budget and in the special session. If you look at the last three items, which are the special session items, we had for K through 12 public schools, the total is 579. The total on those last three items is $278 million in K through 12 education. So which brought the total investments in K through 12 public schools for the FY 26 budget year as $579 million. The $23 million that I mentioned in just a moment ago, if you add that number, the FY 25 number of 23 million to that number, we have invested, and you have invested, a total of over $600 million in new dollars in K through 12 public education. That's a very large investment, and I think that is to be commended. So that is some of the things from those are the major items from the special session. We'll move right into the administration amendment. Just on an overview basis, there are no changes to our growth assumption. You all are very well aware that the funding board set a 0% growth rate for FY 25, and we are tracking very well on that, and I'll show you some numbers on that in just a moment, and a 2% growth rate for FY 26. And so that is what we are building our budget on, are those growth rates. As you can imagine from those numbers, the economists that we have talked to all think that growth we'll have growth, but that it will be slow. And so our revenue supports those growth forecasts. This amendment therefore focuses primarily on the recurring funds that we have available to us, because we're not going to have a lot of non-recurring funds, and I'll show you all of that in a moment. So if you look on the next slide here, what we have is we show you that the tax collections are tracking right at our estimate of $18.6 billion after 7 months. We are at about $9.86 billion in tax receipts through February. At this point in the year, we are doing well. Just wanted to let you know that you can see how flat our growth really is this year, and that's where we are. And it's important to keep that in mind, because this is what we are returning to, something that is more normal. Those of you that have been around here for a while will know that 3 to 5% growth is normal in our budget, and a 2% growth is a slow return to normal, and that's where we feel like we are. Matter of fact, that is displayed in this graph pretty dramatically. If the last few years where we experienced tremendous growth in and coming out of COVID was unusual growth, and it was very positive growth, but we have flattened out the last couple of years, and so we continue to run a relatively slow growth budget. But the good news is, the growth that we showed through COVID was not a blip. It was actually, we moved up. We haven't gone back down into previous budget numbers. So we've seen growth in our economy, we've seen growth in our budget, and it seems to be steady. So that's the good news, but it's steady. That's also the bad news. It's just steady, but it's good, and we're glad to be where we are. So specifically this amendment, let me talk about the revenue that we have since the budget document that we produced we produced for you back in early February. We have additional reversion that we are including of $115 million. And then we have additional treasurer's earnings of $200 million. Both of those are non-recurring sources of revenue. We have a base reduction of $23.7 million. That is a result of the expiration of the ESA hold harmless provision. 3 years ago, when that bill was passed, when the ESA bill was passed, there was a 3-year hold harmless, and we put that into recurring dollars. Well, those 3 years, that 3-year provision has now expired, and so we will reclaim the $23.7 million in that provision, so that that adds that money to our recurring pile. And then we have $2.8 million in additional debt service and $10 million in fiscal note reconciliation. So our total revenue that we have to work with in this amendment is $30.9 million in recurring funds and $315 million in non-recurring funds, or $345.9 million total. So that's the sources of those funds. Let's look at the expenses real quick. I'm not going to go through all these expenditures. You have received that amendment and summary, so you have all of that. But I'll just note the balance, because that will come into play as we go forward. The balances that we have at the end of the day, at the end of the expenditures, a balance of $10.9 million in recurring funds, a negative $8.4 million in non-recurring funds, which the recurring funds will cover the non-recurring funds. And that's why this comes out to a total funds remaining after all of the revenues and the expenditures of $2.6 million after all of this has been accounted for. So that's kind of our overall kind of a financial summary for the amendment. Now let me go in and just talk about some highlights that you probably have seen or heard about by now. First of all, stability funds for nursing homes. We have $28 million in this amendment requested for these stability funds. $53 million match will also be included, which gives the nursing home industry a total of $81 million of an infusion from that item. Similarly, we have a hospital assessment buyback for our state hospitals. We're going to buy back the hospital reimbursement ceiling, which is a cost of $20.7 million. That will also be matched by the federal government, which will provide a total of almost $58 million for our hospital industry as well. And finally, on the health and social services tab here, mental health infrastructure grants with $10 million. If you remember a couple of years ago, we provided some funds to our children's hospitals to be able to add mental health facilities in their emergency rooms. The children go into the emergency rooms at these mental health children's hospitals, and they may have a mental health issue as opposed to a physical issue, but they were the same thing, but they have different needs. And we provided some funds and a grant to the children's hospitals to build a physically appropriate place for children with mental issues when they come into those hospitals. This is to refund that and to continue that program, and that's what this is about. Also, we have in education, we have two initiatives, school safety grants of $20 million in non-recurring funds, as well as Charter Schools Facilities Fund, also with another $20 million. A few more things I just want to touch on, highlights in this amendment. First is the general aviation. We have a general aviation fund where we put $50 million into that fund, and we try to keep it at that level to provide maintenance for our 72 general aviation airports. As you all know, those airports are very, very important across the state, especially in our rural areas where they are often an economic driver for those areas. We're adding another $25 million non-recurring to help boost some of the maintenance in these airports that's badly needed in some of them. We also have some other specific airports that we also have in the amendment that you'll see. In the criminal justice world, a couple of items I'd like to highlight for you. One is a brand new program for a new indigent representation program that the AOC has come to us. And this is a new way for us to provide legal service to our indigent population. We have had, as you're probably very aware, a difficult system of paying attorneys a relatively low rate to be able to do this, and it's been a very difficult process for us with the indigent population. So the justice system came back to us and said, "Hey, here's a better way." So this is a new program in the AOC to be able to serve the indigent population across this state with some specialized help. And it's $13 million in recurring, $4 million non-recurring, and they'll also use the funding that we've been using to pay the attorneys. They'll also use that funding within this program as well. The other victim services, you all are very familiar that VOCA, the VOCA funds from the federal government had a big spike a couple of years ago and then have come back down. And so some of those victim services agencies, which are very, very important to our victims, obviously, but also to our law enforcement agencies, are having some difficulty with that decrease in the funding. So we're proposing $20 million non-recurring spread over 2 years to serve as a match so that we can grant that grant that money to the agencies, and they can use those funds to match for the VOCA funds, which will spread those funds a lot further than they are today, and that will be a help to both the victim services agencies and local law enforcement. The final item on this page is an AI implementation of $10 million. We have many AI pilots and initiatives going on. As you know, this body established the AI Council, the Tennessee's AI Council in the last session, and that is going strong. And SDS is also working on AI. And there are a lot of things going on with AI, with pilots going on around the state that show a lot of promise to be able to improve the efficiency and capabilities of our departments, and also be able to provide a much higher level of service to our citizens. And this fund is to help us to begin to implement those pilots when we find the ones that are the most effective and most capable. And so that's what these funds will be used for. Moving on to the capital budget, a couple of things to mention here. The East Tennessee State Veterans Cemetery has flooding problems, and so we have included them for $1 million update in this budget, and that will be very, very helpful to that cemetery, to our Veterans Services offices as well. Also, the Memphis Airport TCAT. If you remember, in our initial budget, we had $20 million for the TCAT. That TCAT is going to have to be moved and rebuilt, which means we're not going to be able to do it for $20 million. So we've got another $21.3 million in this budget to be able to move and build that airport TCAT. The MTSU Murphy Center, we had $50 million to renovate the Murphy Center. So after further analysis, we've realized that we're going to need to add $25 million to that item in order to be able to carry that out. And finally, higher education institutions. You all are probably very familiar with the fact that higher ed usually goes through the Tennessee State School Bonding Authority to bond some of their buildings, especially for their auxiliary buildings like dorms and those types of things. And this is to recognize those projects. This is not a part of the budget. This is simply to recognize the projects as part of the process. And we have $489.5 million in projects that we are recognizing in this budget. So to kind of bring it all together, our total budget is actually down 1.3% from last year. Last year it was a little over $60.5 billion. This year is $59.7 billion. But the good news is, if you note, when you look at the numbers, where we're down is in federal funds. So we're about $5 billion less in federal funds. Most of those funds are COVID-related federal dollars that are working their way through the system. And so we're seeing our drop in federal funds. But if you look at the very top line, the good news is that our state funds, which are our tax funding for the most part, are up. And so that's good news, because that's what generally funds most of our programs. So I wanted to make sure and point that out. Our total is down, but the state funding increase is actually good news, and we hope that we expect that to continue. That's really what I wanted to show you about the budget. There are a lot more that we can ask about. We can answer questions about. Before I go, though, before I move on, I want to review a couple of things. We've had a lot of questions since the budget document came out in February, and so I want to review a couple of things where we've gotten those questions. The first relates to debt service. We've talked a lot about, we have about a little less than $1 billion in proposed capital projects that we would bond through debt. And so I wanted to take just a moment to outline where we are with debt service and what that looks like. The funding board has a debt service policy that basically says that they recommend that we keep our debt service below 6% of our total tax revenues. When the Lee administration came in, that number was 2.4%. In other words, our debt service, what we have to pay out every year for to service our debt, was 2.4% of our total tax revenues. As of right now, it has dropped even further. It is 1.36%. If we follow through and bond the projects that we are proposing that we bond, that will go up 0.4% to a total of 1.76%. This is still well below the funding board's cap of 6%. It's less than a third of that number, and the new debt is only adding 0.4% to that. So in other words, and the total. The point is that the funding board has done a lot of work to look at what's makes sense for our state, what is reasonable, and what is fair, what is not risky. And they've said that's less than 6%, and we're less than a third of that number already. So that's debt service. Be glad to take whatever questions that you might have on that also. One final thing that I want to go over. Duck River water regionalization. Now, we received a lot of questions about this. So I just want to quickly explain what that is. It's $100 million toward water regionalization. The problem is that we have a region in southern Middle Tennessee that is served by the Duck River. Their water is all served out of the Duck River. It is a fast-growing region. It is a region that will probably continue to grow and put more and more strain on the river. And frankly, as the region grows, the river will simply not be able to supply the water for the region. This project is about $1 billion project to bring water from the Cumberland River to southern Middle Tennessee. It will follow mostly existing pipelines, but it's about $1 billion project. We have budgeted $100 million as seed money for the utilities that are on that line to be able to actually build that pipeline from the Cumberland River in the north all the way to the southern Middle Tennessee area in the south. So that will be a pipe that will bring millions of gallons of water to that area and provide long-term economic growth and water and stability to that region over the long term. It will also have the benefit of taking the pressure off of the Duck River, which is the most biologically diverse river in the United States and North America. And so it'll take the pressure off of that and allow that river to thrive also. But the driving reason behind this is that region needs water and will need water in the future. And that's really what this is about. So I wanted to just clarify that, and also glad to take questions on that. And finally, just to summarize, we continue to be fiscally conservative. I know you all are, and so are we in the budget office. This budget assumes slow growth in tax revenues, as we discussed earlier. We do build on our commitment to education and to infrastructure, and we control our spending and set us up in a way that we expect to have a very good and productive FY27 as we begin to build we look forward to our next budget. So those are the things that I wanted to bring up on this amendment. We will be more than happy, Mr. Chairman, to take whatever questions that you all may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner, very much. And I know folks are beginning to get on the list. So if you have questions, please be sure to get Miranda's attention. All right. First thing, let me ask you about line item 43 on the administration budget amendment overview. There's $25 million that's going to be added to the governor's response and recovery fund. That brings that total to $125 million. So can you talk a little bit about, number one, just briefly describe what will be covered underneath that fund, and also what is the $25 million is the expectation that it will go to continue to do the things that this fund has been created for?
Yeah, that's correct. As you remember, this is the fund that's created. We created to be able to help in this disaster and future disasters going forward. It's a fund that we hope to be able to keep at a fairly high level, so that one of the things that we learned from the East Tennessee disaster is our cities and counties need money quickly. They need to be able to handle things fast, and a lot of times FEMA and other resources to them are anything but fast. And so that's what this is for. But what we've also realized is that as much as we have tried to help the folks in East Tennessee, there's always things that are coming up. New things are coming up almost every day that need help with. So what we did is we just put $25 million more into that fund to help to cover the new items that seem to keep popping up. And what we hope is that that will help us over the next year to serve that population. East Tennessee is also be available for other disasters that may happen. The thing about disasters, as you all know, is that we don't know when or where, but we know we will have a disaster. And so we're trying to set ourselves up, trying to be responsible to set ourselves up for that.
And I don't want to get in too far in the weeds with this, but so $25 million being added to this fund. So how does these areas, let's just say East Tennessee, because that's kind of what's before us. Who's going out to these? Is the expectation for the counties to come to the state or for the state to go to the counties? As I think about the counties, Unicoi County, Johnson County, Greene County, and I'm going to miss one of them, Cott County, all the ones that have been affected, there's still a lot of needs that, like you said, they're still being identified. I can see honestly with the need, we could spend the $125 million still up there and still need more. So how much has been expended out of that fund right now, Commissioner? Has any been removed yet? So
I don't know. That fund is managed by TEMA, I believe. And
Okay.
I think when you say, I think the counties need to come to TEMA
Okay.
and apply for those funds. And they should be fairly quick. They're fairly fast turnaround on those funds.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. The first person on the list is Chairman Williams. You're recognized.
Thank you, Commissioner, for this. I know it's very vanilla, but there's a lot of ice cream cones to hand out here. But just to follow up on Chairman Hicks' question on that money, for that $125 million, or now $125 million, let's say you are a utility district in that area and you've completely lost your water systems. Could those people qualify? It looks as if there's really no guidance as it relates to those monies. Could those utility districts apply for some of that grant money?
Yeah, it's a question I'll have to get back to you with. I know that it is for governments primarily. There may be a provision for utility districts because a lot of the utility districts I know have incurred a lot of loss, and we'll have to look at that. They also have revenues, obviously, to help with that, but they have a lot of rebuilding to do. Let me get back to you with that, Representative Williams.
Yeah, I think it's important, particularly some of these areas, they still don't have their wastewater stuff completely restored. And most of it has to do with the ratepayers don't have the ability to change the rates in order to generate the resources necessary to issue bonds in order to do it. So it's kind of they're in a catch-22, I think. So I think it'd be interesting to know the answer to that question. And if we need to clarify that in some kind of appropriatory language or something like that, I think it's important for us to do that.
Okay.
I did want to go back to, all these multiple pages of spending would not be possible without the treasurer. I could, because of the $200 million that's there, tell me the discussion with the treasurer's office about how we determined after, I think, if my memory serves me correctly, we realized maybe 60 million. I don't remember. Didn't we realize some revenue in the base budget and then another $200 million there? What was that discussion like about determining what the right or appropriate number would be to spend those resources?
Yeah, so we just talked to the treasurer about what is the money available, and in the budget was about $500 million, I believe, in treasurer's earnings. There's about $200 million that we can recognize in this because those are actual earnings that are out there. One of the things that we're very cognizant of is they're non-recurring funds, so we have to treat them that. We have to be careful about that. It's we don't know what these funds are going to be year to year. A few years ago, they were in the $5 million range. So, and now we're getting in this budget $700 million. So it can vary greatly depending on interest rates and depending on the amount of money that the treasurer is managing. And we get those numbers from the treasury.
So there's no set formulary where we say, hey, I think we're safe to take 75% of the net earnings, and the number is what it is. Or are we trying to are we just saying, hey, this is what we need and go?
No, we don't do that. These are not projections. This is actual dollars in hand. And because it can vary so much, we do this based on dollars in hand.
I recognize that, but if there's $550 million in treasurer's earnings, why did we only take 260? Why did we take, what's that discussion?
No, we took the 500 in the budget document that we introduced 6 weeks ago.
Okay.
And then another 200 available for the amendment.
Okay. Thank you. On item number sorry, Chairman, I'm just going to jump to the next one.
Yes, please.
On item number 22, that's just a moving it from non-recurring to recurring or recurring to non-recurring.
Which one? Moving from non-recurring to recurring. Which number was it?
Okay. Thank you. And that would be recurring expense for that would be utilized past this current administration.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. The next question I had was on the $2 million recurring for ag launch. I think it's item number 82. Do we have any recurring revenue? I know ag launch has been around for 10 or 12 years. It's a program where we encourage entrepreneurs to submit their ideas to ag, and ag does that. Was that always funded on a non-recurring basis and we're moving it to recurring?
Yes, that's correct.
So this is the same dollar amount. We're doing that.
I think, yes, it is.
In so doing, now that we're moving it to recurring dollars, do we need to require participants in that program to give up 10% of their businesses to be able to participate?
I'm not familiar with that provision myself, so I don't really have an opinion on that.
Yeah, I think it would be interesting now that it's recurring dollars that we wouldn't retain 10% of a Tennessee business for them to participate. Item number 107 is an additional expenditure for infrastructure for transportation airports, of which we've all been very passionate about for the year. Is this project specific or, okay, so this is just additional non-recurring revenue that we're spending in the general aviation space?
That's correct. We put $50 million through the TDOT into the TDOT Aviation Fund, and they manage that fund. And this will be another $25 million.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman. That's all I've got so far.
All right. Thank you, Chairman Williams. Next on the list is Representative Gant. You're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, thank you for being here. The item number 121, Education School Safety Grant Fund. Can you walk me through first how we came to the 20 million? And I know there's a lot of school safety initiatives that are out there with legislation this year. And I kind of want to get a grasp of what that blanket 20 million for school safety, what that's going to specifically be for.
Yeah, thank you, Representative Grant. Again, I don't have that. I don't have the information to walk you through that the way you asked to. If you don't mind, what I'd like to do is we'll meet with you and kind of walk you through that and get you that information.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Next on the list, Leader Lamberth.
Just a quick question. We were having a side conversation here on really kind of the first page, item number, it's really House Bill 1327. There's a $10 million additional, looks like additional recurring dollars going into that program. What is this? I think I know the answer to this question, but what's the status of that piece of legislation right now? Do you know? I think it's allocated toward House Bill 1327, the Tennessee Rural Workforce Housing Credit. It's item 7.
Yeah, I believe what this is actually adding it back in because we had actually taken it out because of because of the legislation, and this is adding that $10 million back into the budget.
Okay, adding it back in the budget in case that bill were to be successful, then that's there for it.
Well, if that bill was successful, it would come back out again.
Okay. And then a couple of the quick questions on I think it was $500,000 in here for reentry services. Tennessee Prison Outreach. It's item number 39. We've got $5 million from Men of Valor in the base budget. What is this additional money for?
This is another prison program. I would have to get you information on exactly what that is.
If you don't mind, I'd just like to know a little bit more about that. I do appreciate the fact that you all are doing the indigent representation. That is a completely new way to look at that. We've gone back and forth with the AOC and with the judges in the court system for years on hourly rates, on how we could do hourly rates, and it just doesn't work in the modern age of legal practice. And so if this works, I think this potentially can provide for indigent representation down the road a lot better, and quite frankly, can save the state money later. Yep. So one of those things of investing some money now to potentially be able to help later. Just another one here. the Tennessee Sports Hall of Fame, I noticed there's a $5 million reoccurring or non-reoccurring for that. What exactly is that project for?
That the Sports Hall of Fame has currently been in the Bridgestone Arena and is moving to the new Titan Stadium. And this has helped them get their build out so that they get it built out on a timely basis and can open when the Titan Stadium opens. It's for the Hall of Fame.
So it's in the Titan Stadium that we've also already invested a pretty hefty amount of money in, and now need to do some additional for the Sports Hall of Fame.
If the Sports Hall of Fame is going to open on time, they're going to need this. They're going to need this funding to build out their facility. That's correct.
All right. And then the Governor's Early Literacy Foundation, the text engagement program, it's just not a program I was familiar with.
Yeah.
1.5 million recurring. Just what is that about?
So the Governor's Early Literacy Program, as you know, sends books like the Dolly Parton Imagination Library out to students all across the state. And one of the things that obviously we have as a state is we have an initiative to make sure that all of our students are reading on grade level by the third grade. And so the books help with that because they get into the homes. The texting program is a program that they are all obviously that they're already doing, but they have to have a new platform. But the point of it is that you can send a book into a home, but you've got to engage those parents to help the kids to read the books and understand the books. A lot of some of these parents working 2 jobs have 3 or 4 kids, and they're running around, and sometimes they have to be kind of urged to engage with the books, engage with the students, and they also give them strategies for how to engage with the books and with the students to help those books be much, much more effective in actually improving the test scores for the students.
Have we seen that work in any other state? Is there another program this is modeled off of? Is there anything to kind of back that up? It sounds wonderful, but I mean, just kind of
They have
curious.
actually been doing this as a pilot program, and so they've been testing it out, and their results have been very, very positive.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Next on the list, Representative Parkinson, you're recognized.
There you go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a couple of questions. How much federal monies make up our overall budget? And what's the percentage of it?
I believe it's 20 million out of 59, so it's about a third.
You said 20 million?
A billion, I'm sorry. If you look at this under FY26, you see 29 billion is state and 21 billion is federal out of almost 60. So let's say 20 out of 60, about a third.
Okay. Thank you for that. And can you tell me, I forgot which line item it was, but there was $10 million in school improvement grants. Can you tell me what that's for? I think it's 120. Is it 120?
It's 120.
Somewhere around there. Yeah. Item number 120.
You want to answer that? You can.
It could be.
Oh, and Director Thurman, answer that, please.
Yes, so this ties back to the ESA program that was passed several years ago that has the 3-year hold harmless. The 3rd year is FY25, the current year that we're in, about to close. Education is telling us they're tracking at a $10 million expense higher than what's currently budgeted. So to fully fund all that are eligible for that hold harmless, that we need to add another $10 million.
Can I continue, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, please do.
And so, but we have another line item for hold harmless also. Is there a reason why we didn't put them both in the same line item, or?
Which line are you looking at?
I think that's hold harmless. Saw it in there. Okay. I would have to go back through here, but there is.
So on the first page,
Okay.
on item 4, it connected to that same program because we're in the year 3 of 3 of that hold harmless period. The recurring appropriation, which is around 23, is no longer needed, and so in 26 we're pulling that back out of the 26 budget. So they're connected. We need a 25 additional $10 million to fully cover our obligation, and then the obligation is no longer there in 26.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next on the list, Representative Capley, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner, thank you for your time today. I represent a large portion of the Duck River, spend a lot of time on the Duck River, a lot of my kin folks on the Duck River. If you could kind of expand on that a little bit, I know you touched on it briefly, but if you could kind of talk about where some of those funds are going and just kind of what that looks like, please, sir.
Yeah, be glad to. As you know, your region is growing rapidly. And the Duck River is a beautiful river, and it's a biologically diverse river, and we want to save the Duck River. But more, as importantly, we also want to provide water to the people who live in that area, and the more and more people that are moving there, and the more and more industry that is moving there. So there is a plan that's about $1 billion cost to bring water in from the Cumberland River to serve that region, because the Duck River simply over time will not be able to take everything else aside. Even if you said, well, we don't care about the biological diversity and all that, it simply will not be able to serve the region. And so we need to somehow get water from somewhere. This is a plan that will put $100 million as seed money toward about a $900 million to $1 billion project to bring water from the Cumberland River south down in a big pipe all the way down to that region to be able to serve the residents in that region. So that will help that region to be able to grow and have the expansion, economic development that it needs. It will have the further benefit of taking the pressure off of the Duck River so that river will also be improved. So it's a win-win situation, if that makes sense.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Next on the list, Representative Shaw, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here, and let me, I just want to touch on something that Chairman Williams was talking about earlier. First of all, I want to thank you for line item 108. I think it's going to make a whole lot of difference in what happens in West Tennessee by a long shot. So thank you so much, because you opened the door to a lot of successful people around Jackson from all around with the airport grant there. But the general aviation grant, explain to me what's the difference? What do you, I know what you mean by general, but what exactly do they do with that money?
So thank you, Representative Shaw. It was good to see you the other day too, by the way.
Yeah, good to have you. Good to have you. And that's another big project. We're grateful for that. Yeah.
Was the General Aviation Fund is normally kept at around $50 million. We try to keep it at that point every year to serve the general aviation airports, because they don't generally have the funding to be able to repave a runway or provide the kinds of services and the capital that they need. But what we found is, even with providing that $50 million every year, some of those, we've still kind of fallen behind in some areas. And so what we're doing is, on a one-time basis, we're putting another $25 million into that fund to help repave runways and just upgrade and do general maintenance in some of these airports that have kind of fallen behind and need good maintenance, because nobody wants to land their plane on a runway with a bunch of potholes in it. And so we need to provide that kind of help with that kind of funding.
So I guess then we could probably, if needed be, we could tap into that too for general purposes. Would that be a fair statement?
Yes, general aviation airports will be able to apply to TDOT for some of that money. That's correct.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Next on the list, Chairman Hale, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Commissioner, and your team. First of all, I know we had the state board here just a few weeks ago. So can you tell us what those operational increase of that they're asking for, what that's the purpose of that 130 is there?
Was that so the
it's
state?
On it's line 125.
I'm going to take that. I'll ask Director Thurman, if you don't mind, to take that.
Yeah, so they to help cover their non-personnel cost of consultants and I guess some of the grants that they have, there's an inflationary component that they're no longer able to cover. And so they were asking us to help them out to cover those costs going forward. And it has a little bit some flex for growth.
Okay. All right. And then going back off of Representative Gant, going back up to the school safety grant fund, and probably others have that same question. And if you could get us, what that's going to fund. I know there's a lot of different initiatives as Representative Gant has mentioned, but then also how those would be distributed, and what that looks like. Because that's a big concern for our people back home. And then that way we just have a good feel of what that $20 million is going to do.
Okay. Oh, you don't think so? Okay. Thank you. As with Representative Gant, we'll get back to you with kind of what that is and how it's going to be distributed and how the schools can apply for it.
Okay.
That'd be helpful.
And then final question, if I could, Chairman, on the Charter Schools Facilities Fund, I know back a few weeks ago, we had some charter school folks here, for a day on the Hill, and they were talking about facility issues and stuff. So I guess kind of off of that same question, how are those going to be distributed? How is that going to be made available?
Right. As you're probably aware, charter schools have a real hard time with facilities because they often don't get facilities money from the district. And so we'll get back to you with what the process is for applying for those funds. I don't know exactly what that process is. We can get back to you for that. But the purpose is to help these charter schools who don't get capital funding to be able to acquire or to improve the facilities that they have for capital costs.
Okay. Thank you so much, Commissioner.
Be glad
Appreciate
to
you.
get back to you with what that process looks like.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman.
All right, thank you. Next on the list, Representative Love, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I know there've been many conversations about the Duck River, and grateful that we've found a solution. I did have a question, though, of concern as one who lives in a city where the Cumberland River is supplying a lot of water. Is there a time frame on this project, or is it in perpetuity, and what effects have been considered about the impact upon areas in Nashville and other places where we are still growing?
Yeah, I'll probably get TDEC to talk to you about the Cumberland River and what the impact would be on that. My understanding is that even though it's a lot of water for Southern Middle Tennessee, it's not necessarily a lot taken out of the Cumberland River. And so I think they've done that analysis. I don't have that, but be glad to get with you and provide that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep,
Thank
sure.
you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Next on the list, Representative Chisholm.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm looking at line item 143 for the comptroller to do an audit of Memphis City schools. And I'm noticing the price is $3 million. And I'm trying to figure out how we get the $3 million to perform an audit.
So that's a little bit of an estimate, but we know that we've done some other audits that have, and we know what those cost. And so we look at those audits and do a comparison and make an estimate of what this one's going to cost. Obviously, we'll have to go through a process to procure the firm to actually conduct that audit. So it may be a little more, maybe a little less, but that's our estimate at this point.
Okay, so what audits did we compare this one to get that number?
Well, I know that the comptroller looked at there was a TSU audit that I know that the comptroller looked at. And then there was, I believe some of our staff, and I couldn't give you any details, but I can give you some later, talked to some other accounting firms and just kind of got an idea of what costs are so that we could kind of come up with a budget. We haven't gone to procurement. We haven't gone through a bidding process. So we don't have an exact number at this time.
Okay, so that number should be a lot lower than, so $3 million allocated.
We'd love for it to be a lot lower.
Okay, because
Sure.
$3 million just seem kind of absorbent. That's all.
All right, thank you. Next on the list, Representative Miller, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, just curious about the rainy day fund. June 30th, 2022, we were at 1.5 billion. June 30th, 2026, 2.1 billion. Refresh my memory. When does the rainy day fund, I know it's somewhat taboo, but when does it, under what definition does it kick in?
Yeah, you know what? Definition of when it kicks in. Who gets to pull it out?
Rainy day fund.
Yeah, so Dave Thurman, the law allows us, so think about the budget that's enacted on July 1. has a revenue estimate. And if we are underperforming on that revenue estimate, we can pull from the rainy day fund to backfill. Also, if the budget's enacted and we find there's a program that for whatever reason is exceeding the budget, we can pull from the rainy day fund to cover that obligation as well until we get back into session to reset the next budget.
So you've explained that, for an example, it doesn't have anything to do with, for example, a disaster that we've just recently had, East Tennessee. You can't pull from the rainy day fund to accommodate that, sort of like a loan.
Well, so the current law doesn't specify any particular program or event. I think it'd be a discussion to use it in that way, I think, but I think it would,
Say that again. Say that again about the discussion and option.
So it would require a discussion and permission from the legislature to do something like that.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And the next question, I'm being a little petty and a little a little facetious on item 146 out of the $600 million budget. You have $75,000 non-recurring for a legislative conference. What is that?
Okay, this is for this is the clerks conference.
Oh, it's a clerks conference, not a legislative conference. Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
I told you.
All right. Follow up. Chairman Hale, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. As we sit here and look through this, Commissioner,
Thank you.
it stirs more questions. So I've got two for you. First of all, on item 13, number one, the career and technical education grants. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about that 29 million that's?
That's Alex, you'll take that. I'd like to ask Alex Schuman to cover that, if you don't mind, please.
Alex Schuman, Assistant Director. That $29 million was appropriated to K-12 in fiscal '24. It inadvertently reverted back to the general fund when they needed to carry it forward into '25. So we're restoring those funds that inadvertently reverted to the general fund.
So have they not been applied for? Or are they just sitting there to be applied for or?
I would have to defer to the department on how LEAs have been applying for those grants, but the money to fund those grants reverted. And so we need to get it back to them so they can fulfill those grant
Okay.
that were asked for.
And then going over to number 89 and 90, under higher ed, the education, Memphis teacher residency and Nashville teacher residency, those grants. Can you kind of tell us what those are and give us some information on that?
Yeah, I'll have to go back and get that information on how those grants are expected to be awarded, and then I'll get back. We'll get back to you on that as well.
Okay, because that was just some question that we had among some of us here. So,
Yeah, be glad
okay,
to.
if you'll get back with us on that.
Glad
Thank
to.
you.
Sure.
Thank you, Chairman.
Chairman Grills, you are recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And hey, let's run right back to the Duck River. It seems like that's the most important topic of the day. So this money that we're going to invest there, and I believe we invested several dollars in that region over the past few years. I wish we were trying to get the exact numbers of previous hearing. I remember $1.35 billion that came from the federal government to invest in that region. Well, if we invest this $100 million in this pipeline, will that be the end of it, or will there be more money expected over the next few years? Is this just the beginning of another project?
So our expectation is that this is the end of it. This is seed money for the utilities to come together to agree to build this pipeline. And they are all revenue producing utilities and should be able to build the rest of the pipeline. But this is seed money to build this, and we do not expect that there will be additional funding for this pipeline. But I will also tell you, regardless of the funding, this concept is something that we are also looking at. There are other regions of the state that we need to look at regional water solutions that are beyond what the Duck River is and just scattered around the state. And so this is a little bit of an opportunity for the utilities to come together and show how they can work together and how we can do some of these types of projects that include multiple utilities in different regions, because there are regions that are going to have the same problem.
So is this $100 million? Is that going to cover the whole expense of it, or these locals are going to have to come up with
No,
some?
this is probably $1 billion project.
Okay. All right. Well, what is to say after we build this pipeline that the locals don't go right back to the Duck River and start pulling out of it again?
Well, they have to get withdrawal permits from TDEC in order to be able to withdraw any water from the Duck River. And so I would imagine TDEC would monitor and control who goes back and pulls more water out of the duck.
Okay. Well, if we're going to put this kind of investment in it, we probably need to make sure that we have some guarantees that the Duck River is going to be protected from overuse once this pipeline is up and operational.
Well, and this project is part of TDEC's initiative to be able to get this done. And so I think that it is. I think that they are absolutely on board with what you just said, and we'll make sure that the Duck River gets protected when this thing is finished.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
And I guess I'm going to stay with the theme of today, which is the Duck River, which I'd never heard of until a couple of years ago. There's 24.5 million for planning. That's some heavy duty planning. And then another 100 million for, I guess once we get a plan, then we'll spend another 100. Talk about what in the world does that include?
So one of the reasons why I wanted to cover this again, even though it was in the budget and it's really not an amendment topic, was this particular issue. Is that I keep hearing people say, well, we got $125 million going to the Duck River. Well, it's really, there is 24.7, something like that, going to planning for the Duck River. And that is, there are several different plans, and I don't have all that in front of me, but it's essentially, there's water planning, there's habitat planning, there's a lot of different planning all the way from the Normandy Lake and the dam up there, all the way down, all the way across into Hickman County and all the way to where it to the lower Duck. So there's a lot of planning that needs to happen. I can get that for you, but I don't know exactly what that is. But those two items both had Duck River in the name, but they're not exactly Duck River items. One is for the Duck River planning of how do we manage the Duck River in a way that it maintains its value to the state, and the other is how do we get water, a consistent volume of water into this part of the state that is served by the Duck River. So they're really two different things and really don't need to be. They shouldn't. They have been inadvertently kind of combined, but they really don't need to be.
All right. Thank you. Chairman Hawk, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Commissioner, thank you very much. Appreciate the work you've gone in. I think I know the answer to this, but I want to ask anyway. On the overview, the schedule that you've given us, not the presentation that you've given us, but the schedule we've seen, page 7, we're looking at the TennCare reserves. All this is being non-recurring, although we are continuing initiatives from 2024, 2025, and we've got some new initiatives for 2026. Is there ever going to be a point in time where we reach a level of comfort and can call these recurring revenues, or are we going to always call these non-recurring?
I think given the nature of it, we'll probably always call them non-recurring would be my thought. And that is because we have the TennCare agreement that we have, the federal government has an end date. And we don't want to create a fiscal cliff where we create a program and then the agreement changes and we don't have those funds any longer. So we're very careful to make sure that we always consider those non-recurring as it's just a fiscally responsible thing to do so that we don't create problems in the future. I think that's one of the reasons that we continue to be in good shape in this state is when all that funding increased, we didn't go out and create a lot of new programs. We just don't do that. We're very careful about programs. We're very careful about our recurring funding and what we spend those on, and it served us well, and it serves us well with TennCare as well.
And thank you. To a point, never ask a question unless you know the answer, and that's what I hope to hear from you. So thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman Hogg. Next on the list, Representative Hicks, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Commissioner. And I just want to make you sort of aware of something, an issue that come along, going back to the disaster relief. The counties that was affected in that area sort of contacted us over the last couple of weeks. And whenever we passed the legislation on the interest funding, we sort of maybe on an oversight left out their administrative cost to get bonds and to do these loans. Okay. So nowhere in that legislation was there anything written for them to be able to get that expense back. And it's not a lot of money. Okay. But right now, all the counties, it looks like it's about $1 million. And for them right now, it is a lot of money. You know what I'm saying? So I just wanted to make you aware while we was here that's going to be coming up.
I appreciate you bringing that up. There's no doubt those counties are under a lot of financial strain. And so I appreciate you bringing that to my attention. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Next on the list, Representative Capley, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, real quick, and I'll hush. Looking at the continuation of fiscal year 2024 initiatives, Chairman Hale here and myself, we're kind of looking at the Diapers for Kids program, and it says for fiscal year 26, cost increases are going to be $11.2 million. And then you go down to the bottom and it says there's a Human Services Diaper Connection Grant for another $1 million. So I guess my question is, how much money are we spending on diapers now? Because $12 million is, it's a lot of diapers.
What's this Yeah, I'll get back to the whole thing. I think these are two different things. And the $11 million that you see in FY24, I believe, is non-recurring funding.
Okay.
Right. Is that right? Yeah. It's non-recurring funding. And the $1 million is a specific diaper program, but I can get back to you on the differences and how those are different.
But Mr. Chair, how would it be non-recurring if it's a continuation from 24 and we're increasing it in 26? How is that?
This is our first one up here. Yeah, the one that the FY24 initiatives is a pilot program from shared savings. And so it's, I believe it's probably funded for multiple years. Right. But it's a pilot program so it's non-recurring, and it's a pilot program to see how that works. This was the first initiative. I don't think the state's done this before. And we talked about this a couple of years ago as a way to help out, particularly our lower income folks in the state, mothers in the state.
If y'all could just give me kind of a breakdown of that in my email, that'd be awesome.
Okay, sure.
Thank
Glad
you.
to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right. I have no one else on the list. Commissioner, thank you. Thank you for answering our questions and for your presentation. We really, really appreciate it. And
glad to do it.
Any documentation that was requested, if you want to send that to my office, we'll make sure we get that out to all members so you don't have to worry about that.
We'll do that.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Without objection, we are now back in session. And members, that does complete our calendar for today. Do we have any further business coming before the committee? Representative Sparks, you're recognized, sir.
Yeah, I just want to remind folks about the Men of Valor breakfast in the morning. It starts at 7 a.m.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further business coming before the committee? I see none. Without objection, we stand adjourned. We're adjourned.